A man steps forward, a gun hidden beneath his coat. The royal guard stands still until he doesn't. What happens next shocks everyone. But now, I want to hear from you. Where are you watching from? What would you have done in this moment? Drop a comment below. If you found this story as unbelievable as we did, make sure to hit that like button, subscribe, and turn on notifications, because tomorrow we have another mind-blowing story you won't want to miss. Trust me, it's going to be even more intense. Stay tuned. Terror at Buckingham Palace. Guard reacts in seconds. The sun hung low over Buckingham Palace, casting long shadows across the courtyard as tourists gathered near the gates, cameras clicking, laughter filling the air. It was a perfect afternoon, or so it seemed. Among the sea of excited faces, one man moved differently. He wasn't admiring the grandeur of the palace. He wasn't taking pictures or chatting with fellow tourists. Instead, Luke Dawson, a 37-year-old wanted fugitive, walked with calculated purpose. His sharp gaze scanned the area, not for beauty, but for sightlines, security patterns, escape routes. His expensive coat blended well with the crowd, but his scuffed combat boots told a different story. A man who had spent years on the move, in the shadows, waiting for his moment. And today, that moment had arrived. Across from him, standing in perfect stillness, was Master Sergeant Adam Reynolds, a 40-year-old combat veteran with 2 decades of military service. He had seen war. He had lived through firefights, ambushes, and moments where life and death balanced on a razor's edge. Now, in his Royal Guard uniform, he stood as tradition demanded, motionless, unreadable, seemingly unshakable. But beneath the surface, Adam's instincts, honed from years in active combat zones, were screaming. Something was wrong. The tension was invisible to the tourists around them, but Adam felt it. It wasn't just Luke's unnatural stillness or the way he moved with too much precision. It was the way the space around him subtly shifted, people unconsciously avoiding him, stepping away as if their instincts sensed something their minds hadn't caught up to yet. Then Luke made his move. He drifted closer, his footsteps too controlled, too deliberate. Adam remained still, his training keeping his body locked in place, but his mind was already calculating distances, analyzing threats, predicting outcomes. Luke finally spoke, his voice a low murmur, just loud enough for Adam to hear. "Quite the spectacle, isn't it?" His accent was carefully neutral, but beneath it lay something harder, something colder. His hand gestured vaguely toward the palace walls. "All this ceremony, all this pretense of power." Adam didn't react. He didn't need to. He had seen this kind of arrogance before, the kind that masked something far more dangerous. And then, as Luke stepped one pace closer, Adam caught it, the scent of gun oil beneath the expensive cologne. And he knew. The real danger was seconds away. The moment stretched, thick with tension, though no one else seemed to notice. Tourists continued to snap pictures, their laughter ringing through the air. But Master Sergeant Adam Reynolds stood still, his heartbeat steady, his senses razor sharp. Luke Dawson took another slow step forward, his expression unreadable. His words dripped with contempt. "All these medals," he sneered, his gaze flicking to the polished honors on Adam's uniform. "Earned fighting for what? Democracy? Freedom?" He scoffed. Pretty words to mask the decay. Adam didn't blink. He had heard men like this before, in war zones, in interrogation rooms, in the final moments before all hell broke loose. Luke inched closer, invading Adam's space, the scent of gun oil now impossible to ignore. Adam's combat-trained mind processed every detail in an instant, the uneven weight distribution in Luke's stance, the bulge beneath his coat, the way his right hand hovered just a little too close to his chest. A concealed weapon. The air shifted. Something primal, something ancient, the kind of silence that precedes a storm. And then it happened. Luke's hand moved, his coat flaring open. The glint of metal caught the sunlight. A CZ-75 pistol, sleek and deadly. His thumb flicked the safety off with practiced ease. The crowd froze. A woman gasped. A man instinctively stepped in front of his children. But Adam had already seen enough. He didn't hesitate. In a blink, his right hand shot forward, his white-gloved fingers clamping around the weapon before the trigger could be pulled. Luke barely had time to react. His eyes widened, realization dawning too late. With explosive precision, Adam twisted the gun from Luke's grip, disarming him in one fluid motion. His left hand snatched the magazine, while his right flicked back the slide, ejecting a live round that tumbled through the air before clinking onto the stone pavement. 1 second. That's all it had taken. Luke staggered back, disarmed and exposed, his face twisting in shock and rage. The world around them had finally caught up. Tourists screamed. Security scrambled into action. But Adam Reynolds never broke posture, never lost control. His job wasn't done, not yet. Luke staggered back, his hands now empty, his face a twisted mix of shock and fury. He had walked into this moment thinking he was in control. Now, in front of dozens of stunned onlookers, he had been disarmed in the blink of an eye. The silence shattered. Tourists screamed. A woman pulled her child behind her. Phones were ripped from pockets, cameras snapping up to capture what had just happened. The air buzzed with confusion, fear, and awe. But Master Sergeant Adam Reynolds hadn't moved. Not a fraction. Not yet. In his right hand, the disarmed CZ-75 rested, its slide locked back, the live round still clinking onto the stone pavement. His left hand held the magazine, its bullets useless in his grip. Years of combat training had taken over, guiding each movement with ruthless efficiency. Luke breathed heavily. His nose flared, eyes darting between his lost weapon and the growing wave of security officers rushing toward him. For the first time, fear flickered behind his gaze. "You have no idea what you just did," he hissed, voice low, barely above a growl. Adam remained motionless. He didn't respond. He didn't need to. His stare alone was enough, unwavering, cold, the stare of a soldier who had seen far worse than this. But Luke wasn't done. His hand twitched toward his coat. Instinct, desperation, the move of a man whose plan had just gone up in flames. Adam moved first. In a blur of motion, Adam stepped forward, closing the distance with military precision. His left arm snapped up, grabbing Luke by the wrist, twisting it hard and fast, sending a sharp bolt of pain through Luke's arm. His knees buckled. With a single calculated motion, Adam pivoted, swept a leg behind Luke's, and drove him backward. Luke hit the ground, hard. The impact sent a sharp gasp from his lips as his back smacked against the cold stone pavement. His head barely missed the ground, but his arms were already locked in a hold he couldn't break. The world around them exploded, security swarming, officers shouting commands, the weight of Buckingham Palace's elite forces collapsing in on the fallen fugitive. Still, Adam never broke discipline. Even as the man beneath him thrashed, even as chaos erupted, his grip remained firm, his stance still unshaken. The threat had been neutralized. But Adam knew this wasn't over yet. The moment shot Luke Dawson hit the ground, security forces descended like a thunderclap. The once bustling courtyard of Buckingham Palace had turned into a controlled chaos of shouting officers, flashing cameras, and gasping onlookers. But Master Sergeant Adam Reynolds remained calm. His grip stayed firm, his breathing steady, his posture unshaken. "Don't move," a Metropolitan Police officer barked, his weapon trained on Luke. Another officer rushed in, kneeling beside the subdued man, slapping a knee into his back to pin him down completely. Adam finally stepped back. His job was done, but the truth was just beginning to unfold. As officers yanked Luke to his feet, his expensive coat now wrinkled and stained, something metallic clattered to the ground. Another weapon. The moment it hit the stone pavement, an officer snatched it up, his eyes widening. He had a backup. He muttered, examining the second firearm, a compact Glock with an illegal suppressor attachment. Adam didn't flinch. He'd suspected as much. Luke let out a low, bitter laugh, blood trickling from his broken nose. "You think this is over?" he rasped. "You think I was working alone?" Adam's eyes locked onto him, cold and unreadable. He'd heard that tone before, not just from men who had lost, but from those who knew something bigger was still coming. The police wasted no time. "Get him out of here," the commanding officer ordered, gesturing toward a nearby armored transport vehicle. As Luke was hauled toward it, his wild, hate-filled eyes stayed on Adam. "You don't even know what you stopped today," Luke spat, his voice dripping with venom. "But you will." Adam didn't react. He simply watched as the doors slammed shut, locking Luke away. But something about those words hung in the air, heavy and unsettling. A beat later, a detective in plain clothes approached Adam, his face pale as he read something on a tablet screen. "We just ran his prints," he said, his voice tight. "Interpol had a red flag on him. He's tied to multiple incidents across Europe: bombings, assassinations, high-profile attacks." He glanced up at Adam. This wasn't just an armed confrontation. This was a planned strike. Adam's jaw tightened. He had known something was wrong from the start. And now it was clear? This wasn't just about one man. It was about something much bigger. The police van rumbled away, taking Luke Dawson into custody, but Master Sergeant Adam Reynolds knew this was far from over. The words Luke had spat before being hauled away lingered in his mind. "You don't even know what you stopped today, but you will." That wasn't just the desperation of a defeated man. That was a warning. The detective beside him scrolled through his tablet, his face tight with concern. Interpol just confirmed it. Dawson wasn't acting alone. He's part of a larger network operating across Europe. He hesitated before adding, "and they had bigger plans." Adam didn't react, but inside his instincts sharpened. He had spent years in war zones, seeing firsthand what men like Luke were capable of. They never worked alone. There was always another piece to the puzzle. A uniformed officer jogged up, breathless. "Sir, we found something." Adam turned as the officer handed over a small burner phone, one Luke had dropped during the struggle. The screen was cracked, but it was still powered on. The detective tapped the device, pulling up the last message sent. His expression darkened as he read it aloud. "Phase 1 compromised. Initiate contingency plan." Adam's gut tightened. Phase 1. That meant there was a Phase 2. Before the detective could say another word, his radio crackled to life. "Emergency alert. Armed suspect spotted near Whitehall. Possible connection to Buckingham incident. All units respond." The air turned electric. Adam's posture stiffened, his military instincts kicking in immediately. The detective turned to him. "We need to move. Now." Adam didn't hesitate. As sirens wailed through the streets of London, Adam was already in motion, stepping into a police vehicle, his mind racing. He had stopped one threat today, but something bigger was unfolding. Something planned, something coordinated. Luke Dawson hadn't been lying. Adam wasn't just dealing with a lone extremist. He had just stepped into the middle of a war, and it was only just beginning. What just happened outside Buckingham Palace was nothing short of mind-blowing. 1 second, it was just another day filled with tourists and tradition. Then suddenly, a hidden danger was revealed, and a split-second decision changed everything. Now, we want to hear your thoughts. What do you think about how the Royal Guard reacted? Do you believe his military instincts saved lives? Or do you think this is just the beginning of something much bigger? Drop a comment below and let us know where you're watching from. We love seeing how far our stories travel, and your insights make these discussions even better. And if this story had you on the edge of your seat, make sure to hit that like button, subscribe, and turn on notifications. Because tomorrow, we have an even crazier story that will leave you shocked. Trust me, you won't want to miss it. So tell us, if you were there that day, what would you have done? Let's talk about it in the comments.